B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'nasliach. Welcome to the Weekly Dose. In the early 1920s, there was a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Gershom Libman. Rabbi Gershom later on was responsible for all of the Torah yeshivas in France. In the beginning, in the Nevardok yeshiva, the minhag, the custom was to have the students work on their modesty and humility. This was one thing that was taught in the yeshiva and was extremely emphasized on by the rabbis. One day, Reb Gershom makes a decision, and he thinks to himself, how can I really work on my humility? Like the Pirkei Avot says, if you ever want to feel humility, if you ever want to understand what a human being is and what a lowly being they are, think, where do you come from? And where you're actually going to end up, which is really 6 feet under. And that should bring a person to really feel humility. So Reb Gershom thinks to himself, what better way to experience this than the idea of going to the cemetery at night and using the mikveh, which was really reserved for immersing the deceased. So one night, he waits in a Bet Midrash until all of the others leave, so no one knows where he's going. This is past midnight, and he starts to walk in the freezing cold weather to the mikveh in the cemetery. In the middle of the way, it starts to rain. Thunder starts, literally like the movies. It's terrifying as it is. And he's terrified. He's trembling as he's walking to the cemetery to use the mikveh, the ritual waters. Halfway there, he thinks to himself, maybe I've already felt the fear. Maybe I should stop right here. God has shown me. The thunder and everything is really scaring me already. But he says, you know what? I've started the process. I'm going to go till the end. And he walks to the cemetery, to those old gates, opens the gate, goes inside the mikveh. Bear in mind, the thunder is still going. He's drenched. He's completely soaked. And he's terrified. It is cold, wet, and dark everywhere. He takes off his clothes in the dark, and he begins to immerse himself in the mikveh. And as he brings his head out of the water, a huge lightning hits, lights the entire room, and right before him, he sees another man in the mikveh. Terrified, he starts to scream, comes out of the mikveh, puts on his clothes, and he starts running for his life. He falls over the tombstones, and he's all muddy and dirty. Finally, he runs halfway home, and he starts to breathe again. He stops, and he starts thinking to himself. And he says to himself, Gershom, you nothing. Look at you. You thought you were the best. You thought you had the idea how to humble yourself. But little did you know, someone else had already thought of it. It's a great lesson of life. The lesson is that most of our lives we spend our time in competition with other people. How can I be better than him? How can I be better than her? But really what we're supposed to be focusing on is how can I be better than me? HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us potential, and He expects none of us to exceed someone else's potentials. But He does expect us to exceed our own, which is the gift that we have been given. You're not in a race with anybody but yourself. Think of how you can humble yourself and exceed your own potentials. And that's how every person will reach their mark, the finish line. So instead of thinking, what can I do to out somebody else? Think, what's the next step that I can take to get to the finish line before I get to the finish line? Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.